Your brain is trying to kill you. Not literally, but that constant stream of thoughts, analyzing every scenario, replaying conversations, imagining worst-case outcomes, it's slowly draining your life force. We spend 70% of our waking hours lost in thought, most of it negative and repetitive. I used to believe overthinking was a superpower until it nearly destroyed me. What if I told you the solution isn't more thinking, but less? The ancient Stoics discovered this centuries ago. Mental clarity doesn't come from analyzing everything to death. It comes from knowing exactly which thoughts deserve your attention and which ones to let float away. In this video, I'm going to share how thinking less completely transformed my life and the surprisingly simple techniques that can do the same for you. These aren't fluffy mindfulness cliches. These are practical, battle-tested methods that work when you're stressed, overwhelmed, and feel like your mind is turning against you. The most successful people throughout history weren't necessarily the smartest. They were the ones who mastered the art of mental minimalism. Stay with me, and I'll show you exactly how to do the same. The thought elimination diet. Have you ever noticed how adding more and more to your plate never seems to solve the problem? You download meditation apps, buy self-help books, try breathing exercises, yet your mind still races like a Formula One car with broken brakes. What if the solution isn't adding more techniques to quiet your thoughts, but removing the thoughts themselves? Most people approach mental peace like they're decorating a house. They keep adding furniture, hoping the room will feel less cluttered. But here's what nobody tells you. Sometimes the answer is taking furniture out, not putting more in. Your mind works the exact same way. Think about your body for a moment. When you feel sluggish and bloated, what do doctors recommend? They don't tell you to eat more healthy foods on top of your junk food. They tell you to eliminate the foods that are making you sick first. Your digestive system gets a break, inflammation goes down, and suddenly you have energy you forgot existed. Your mind craves this same relief, but nobody's teaching you how to give it what it needs. Instead, we're told to meditate our way through the mental mess, to think positive thoughts on top of negative ones, to layer coping strategies over fundamental problems. It's like trying to clean a dirty window by spraying more cleaner on it without ever wiping it down. There's a revolutionary approach that changes everything. It's based on a simple principle that most people never consider. Your thoughts aren't all equally important, and many of them are actively poisoning your peace of mind. Just like certain foods trigger inflammation in your body, certain categories of thoughts trigger mental inflammation that keeps you stressed, anxious, and exhausted. But here's where it gets interesting. When you remove these toxic thought patterns, something magical happens. Your mind doesn't become empty. It becomes clear. The important thoughts, the creative insights, the genuine wisdom that was buried under mental junk suddenly has space to breathe and grow. I discovered this by accident during the worst period of my life. My mind was so loud, so chaotic, that I couldn't function. Traditional meditation felt impossible. Positive thinking felt fake. Nothing was working until I tried something radical. Instead of trying to add peace to my mind, I started removing the thoughts that were stealing my peace. The results were immediate and shocking. Within days, I felt clearer than I had in years. Within weeks, people were asking what had changed about me. The technique was so simple, so obvious in hindsight, that I couldn't believe nobody had taught it to me before. This is method number 1 out of 7 life-changing approaches I'm sharing with you today. It's called the thought elimination diet, and it works because it treats your mind like the sophisticated system it is, one that needs regular cleaning, not just constant feeding. Here's exactly how it works. Just like nutritionists recommend elimination diets to identify which foods are causing problems in your body, you're going to systematically eliminate categories of thoughts to discover which ones are causing problems in your mind. You're not suppressing these thoughts forever. You're giving your mental system a break so it can reset and function properly. Start with 1 week of eliminating all self-criticism. Every time you catch yourself thinking something negative about yourself, you redirect that mental energy elsewhere. Don't judge the thought, don't fight it, just notice it, and let it pass like a cloud in the sky. This isn't about positive thinking, it's about mental space creation. The following week, eliminate all future planning beyond 24 hours. This sounds extreme, but here's what happens. You realize how much mental energy you waste on scenarios that never happen and problems that never materialize. Your mind gets to focus on what's actually in front of you instead of living in imaginary tomorrows. Week 3. Eliminate all revisiting of past conversations and situations. No replaying arguments, no analyzing what you should have said, no mental time travel to moments that are already finished. This alone will shock you with how much mental bandwidth you didn't know you had. The beauty of this approach is that it shows you exactly which thoughts serve you and which ones drain you. Some eliminations will feel liberating immediately. Others will feel uncomfortable, revealing how addicted you've become to certain patterns of thinking. Both responses give you valuable information about your mental habits. After each elimination period, you consciously reintroduce that category of thought and notice what happens. Does self-criticism actually motivate you, or does it just make you feel terrible? Does constant future planning make you more prepared, or does it just create anxiety about things beyond your control? You become a scientist, studying your own mind. The 10-minute mental container method. Your thoughts are like unruly house guests. They show up whenever they want, stay as long as they please, eat all your food and leave a mess behind. But what if I told you there's a way to train even the most disruptive thoughts to follow house rules? What if you could transform your relationship with worry from being its victim to being its landlord? Most people try to evict worried thoughts entirely, and this backfires spectacularly. Your brain treats suppressed thoughts like forbidden fruit. The more you try not to think about something, the more compelling it becomes. It's like trying not to think about a pink elephant. The moment someone says those words, what pops into your head? Exactly. But here's what changes everything. Instead of trying to eliminate worries, you're going to give them a designated space and time. You're going to become the boss of your own mental real estate, setting boundaries that even the most persistent, anxious thoughts will learn to respect. Think of your mind like a house. Right now, worried thoughts have free rein. They barge into your bedroom at 3 a.m, interrupt your dinner conversations, show up during important meetings, and generally make themselves comfortable wherever they want. You've been living like a tenant in your own mind, powerless to set any rules. This second method, out of 7, will transform you from a mental tenant into a mental landlord. It's called the 10-minute mental container method, and it works because it respects a fundamental truth about human psychology. What we resist persists, but what we schedule loses its power over us. Here's the revolutionary part. When a worry emerges during your day, you don't fight it. You don't try to reason with it. You don't attempt to replace it with positive thoughts. Instead, you acknowledge it, like a persistent salesperson at your door, and say, I have a meeting scheduled for this type of concern. Come back during designated worry time. This isn't denial. This isn't suppression. This is boundary setting, and your brain will respect boundaries once you establish them consistently. You're training your nervous system to understand that rumination is an activity with specific hours, not a constant state of being. Choose a 10-minute window in your day, the same time every day. This becomes your official worry container. Maybe it's 8:30 in the morning. During these 10 minutes, you have full permission to worry about anything and everything that's been trying to grab your attention. But here's the crucial part. Outside of this container, these thoughts are trespassing on your mental property. When worry tries to crash your lunch break, you remind it and yourself that it has a scheduled appointment later. When anxiety attempts to hijack your evening relaxation, you politely redirect it to its designated time slot. Something fascinating happens within the first week of implementing this method. Your worried thoughts actually start showing up less during the day, because they know they have guaranteed time later. It's like having a crying child. When they know they have your attention scheduled, they stop demanding it constantly. Even more interesting, when you sit down for your official worry time, you often find you can't remember what you were so concerned about earlier. The thoughts that seemed urgent and important when they were interrupting your life suddenly feel manageable or even silly when you examine them during their scheduled time. This method works because it leverages a principle called temporal containment. Your brain is incredibly good at compartmentalizing when you give it clear structure. Professional athletes use this technique without realizing it. They have specific times for training, specific times for competition, and specific times for rest. Their bodies adapt to these rhythms and perform optimally within each container. Your mind craves this same structure. When you tell it that worry time is from 7 to 7:10 each evening, it starts to relax during the other 23 hours and 50 minutes of your day. It knows its concerns will be heard and addressed, just not immediately and not constantly. During your 10-minute worry session, don't try to solve everything. Simply acknowledge each concern that comes up. Some you might jot down to address practically later. Others you might realize are outside your control entirely. The goal isn't to fix every problem. It's to give your anxious thoughts the attention they're seeking, so they stop hijacking the rest of your mental space. Decision minimalism, the rule of 3. You make approximately 35,000 decisions every single day. From what to wear, to what to eat, to which route to take to work, your brain is constantly processing choices. But here's what's slowly killing your mental clarity. Most of these decisions are stealing energy from the ones that actually matter. Every choice you make, no matter how small, depletes something called decision fatigue. It's like your willpower runs on a battery that gets drained with each selection you make. By the time you face important decisions later in the day, you're running on mental fumes. This is why you can spend 30 minutes scrolling Netflix, unable to choose what to watch, after making complex decisions all day at work. But decision fatigue doesn't just make you tired, it makes you overthink. When your decision-making energy is depleted, your brain compensates by analyzing options more and more thoroughly, seeking the perfect choice to justify the mental effort you're about to spend. This creates a vicious cycle where the more tired you become, the more you overthink, which makes you more tired, which makes you overthink even more. Most people try to solve this by making better decisions. They research more, compare more options, seek more opinions, and exhaust themselves in the process. But what if the solution isn't making better decisions, but making fewer decisions? What if the key to mental clarity isn't perfecting your choice-making process, but simplifying it so dramatically that overthinking becomes impossible? This is method number 3 out of 7, and it's called decision minimalism, using the rule of 3. It works because it acknowledges an uncomfortable truth. Having unlimited options doesn't make you happier or more successful. It makes you paralyzed, exhausted, and constantly second-guessing yourself. Here's how this changes everything. For any decision you face, you artificially limit yourself to exactly 3 options. Not 2, which feels too restrictive. Not 4 or 5, which invites comparison paralysis. 3 options give you enough choice to feel autonomous, while preventing the overwhelm that comes with endless possibilities. But here's the crucial part. You spend exactly 3 minutes evaluating these 3 options. Not 3 hours, not 3 days, not 3 weeks. 3 minutes forces your brain to focus on what truly matters, instead of getting lost in minor details that won't impact your life significantly. Let's say you're choosing a restaurant for dinner. Instead of scrolling through dozens of options on food delivery apps, you quickly identify 3 places that serve food you enjoy. You spend 1 minute thinking about each option, considering factors like price, delivery time, and what you're craving. After 3 minutes total, you choose and you commit. No looking back, no second guessing, no wondering if you made the right choice. This sounds overly simple, but watch what happens. First, you'll notice how much mental energy you have left for important decisions later in the day. Second, you'll realize that most of your choices turn out fine, regardless of how much analysis you put into them. Third, you'll discover that the fear of making the wrong choice was consuming far more energy than actually living with the consequences of imperfect decisions. The rule of 3 works for everything. Choosing clothes in the morning. Pick 3 outfits, spend 3 minutes deciding, move on with your day. Selecting which project to tackle first at work. Identify 3 priorities, spend 3 minutes evaluating urgency and impact, then dive in. Planning weekend activities. Consider 3 possibilities, make a quick decision, and enjoy your time instead of spending it planning. Here's what most people don't realize about decision-making. The quality of your life isn't determined by making perfect choices. It's determined by making good enough choices quickly and then fully committing to them. Regret and second-guessing steal more happiness than occasional imperfect decisions ever could. The rule of 3 also eliminates something psychologists call the paradox of choice. Research shows that when people have too many options, they become less satisfied with whatever they choose because they can't stop imagining how other options might have been better. By limiting yourself to 3 choices, you eliminate most of this mental torture. But there's an even deeper benefit. When you stop agonizing over small decisions, you free up mental space for the choices that genuinely impact your life. Instead of spending emotional energy on what to have for lunch, you can invest that energy in career decisions, relationship choices, and life direction. You become decisive where it matters, because you've stopped wasting decision-making power where it doesn't. The 3-minute time limit is just as important as the 3 options. It forces you to trust your intuition instead of overthinking yourself into paralysis. Your gut reaction to options is often more accurate than lengthy analysis, especially for everyday decisions that won't significantly impact your future. The Stoic preemptive funeral. Your worst fears are bullies that get stronger every time you run away from them. They lurk in the shadows of your mind, growing more terrifying with each glimpse you catch of them. But what if instead of avoiding these fears, you invited them in for tea? What if you could strip them of their power by facing them so completely that they lose their ability to terrorize you? Most people spend enormous amounts of mental energy trying not to think about bad things that might happen. They distract themselves, suppress the thoughts, or try to replace them with positive thinking. But here's what happens when you avoid your fears. They don't disappear. They multiply in the darkness of your unconscious mind, becoming more powerful and more frightening than they ever were in reality. Ancient Stoic philosophers discovered something remarkable about human psychology 2,000 years ago. They found that the anticipation of suffering is almost always worse than the actual experience of it. Your imagination, unchecked by reality, creates catastrophic scenarios that are more terrible than what life typically delivers. But they also discovered a way to use this tendency to your advantage. This is method number 4 out of 7, and it's called the Stoic preemptive funeral. It works because it takes your worst-case scenario thinking and weaponizes it against anxiety itself. Instead of letting catastrophic thoughts torture you in fragments throughout your day, you deliberately think them to their absolute conclusion in a controlled way, then symbolically bury them. Here's why this is revolutionary. Most feared scenarios that cycle through your mind are incomplete thoughts. You imagine losing your job, but you don't think through what would actually happen next. You worry about rejection, but you don't follow that thought to its logical end. These half-formed fears are like horror movie monsters, terrifying because you only see glimpses of them in the shadow. The preemptive funeral brings your monsters into full light, and something amazing happens. When you see them completely, they lose their power to frighten you. Most fears, when examined thoroughly, reveal themselves to be far less catastrophic than your anxiety suggested. Here's exactly how to conduct a thought funeral. When a worst-case scenario keeps haunting your mind, set aside 15 minutes to think it through completely. Don't resist the thought or try to make it positive. Instead, follow it to its absolute worst possible conclusion. Let's say you're terrified of public speaking because you might embarrass yourself. During your thought funeral, you don't just imagine feeling nervous before a presentation. You visualize yourself forgetting your words completely, standing there speechless, seeing disappointed faces in the audience. You imagine people talking about your failure afterward, maybe even a video of your embarrassing moment getting shared online. Then you keep going. What would actually happen next? You'd feel embarrassed for a while. Some people might remember it. You might need to address it with your boss or colleagues. You'd probably lose sleep over it for a few days or weeks. But then what? Life would continue. You'd still have your job, your relationships, your health. The embarrassment would fade as people moved on to other concerns. You follow this imaginary scenario months into the future. Would anyone still be talking about your presentation disaster a year later? Would it fundamentally change your life trajectory? Most likely, you'd discover that even your worst-case scenario, while unpleasant, wouldn't destroy you. But here's the crucial final step. After you've thought through the entire catastrophic scenario, you symbolically bury it. You might write it on paper and throw it away. Visualize placing it in a coffin and watching it get buried, or simply declare it dead and gone. This ritual signals to your unconscious mind that this particular fear has been fully processed and no longer needs your attention. Something remarkable happens after you funeral a fear. The next time that worried thought tries to surface, your brain remembers that it's already been dealt with. The anxiety loses its grip because you've already survived the worst possible version of it in your imagination. You've proven to yourself that even if your fear came true, you would find a way to handle it. The Stoics understood that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. By deliberately imagining the full extent of potential suffering, we realize that most of our fears are manageable even in their worst forms. This isn't pessimistic thinking, it's fear inoculation. You're building immunity to anxiety by exposing yourself to controlled doses of worst-case scenarios. This method works because it completes the fear cycle. Instead of letting catastrophic thoughts loop endlessly in your mind, you think them through to their conclusion, process them fully, and then release them. Your brain stops bringing them to your attention because they've been thoroughly addressed. Physical override protocol. Your body is smarter than your mind when it comes to breaking mental loops. While your brain can get stuck replaying the same worried thoughts for hours, your body has built-in circuit breakers that can snap you out of overthinking in seconds. But most people never learn how to activate these natural reset mechanisms. Here's what happens when you overthink. Your nervous system gets locked into a specific brainwave pattern that keeps you cycling through the same thoughts. It's like a record with a scratch that keeps skipping back to the same line of a song. Your mind tries to think its way out of this loop. But thinking is what created the loop in the first place. It's like trying to escape quicksand by struggling harder. But your body speaks a different language than your brain. While your mind deals in words, concepts, and abstract fears, your body operates in the immediate physical reality of the present moment. When you engage your body intensely enough, it forces your mind to join it in the here and now, breaking the rumination cycle instantly. Most people understand this instinctively, but don't use it strategically. You've probably noticed that you can't worry about tomorrow's presentation while you're in the middle of an intense workout. You can't replay an argument from yesterday while you're sprinting to catch a bus. Physical intensity demands mental presence, but we usually stumble into this relief by accident, instead of using it as a deliberate tool. This is method number 5 out of 7, and it's called the Physical Override Protocol. It works because it leverages the fact that your nervous system can only be in one state at a time. You cannot simultaneously be lost in overthinking and fully engaged in intense physical activity. The body-mind connection doesn't allow it. Here's the protocol. The moment you notice yourself caught in a mental loop, replaying conversations, worrying about future scenarios, analyzing problems that have no immediate solution, you immediately engage in 60 seconds of intense physical activity. Not gentle movement, not stretching, not walking, intense activity that demands your body's full attention. This could be sprinting in place as fast as you can, doing push-ups until your muscles burn, holding a wall sit until your legs shake, or doing jumping jacks until you're breathing hard. The key is choosing something that makes it impossible for your mind to wander. Your body should be working hard enough that thinking about anything else becomes secondary to the physical challenge you're facing. Why 60 seconds? It's long enough to trigger the neurological shift you need, but short enough that you can do it anywhere, anytime, without special equipment or preparation. 60 seconds of intense physical activity floods your system with endorphins, increases oxygen to your brain, and forces your nervous system out of the rumination pattern. But here's what makes this protocol particularly powerful. After 60 seconds of intense movement, your body This confidence alone often prevents rumination from taking hold, because your brain knows it won't be allowed to cycle unchecked. Part 6. The Ghost Conversation Exorcism. Inside your head right now, there are probably dozens of conversations happening that aren't real. Arguments you're winning against people who criticized you months ago. Explanations you're rehearsing for situations that may never occur. Confrontations you're having with imaginary versions of real people who would never actually say the things you're imagining them saying. These ghost conversations are some of the most exhausting forms of overthinking because they feel so real while you're having them. Your body responds with genuine stress hormones. Your heart rate increases, your muscles tense. You feel the same emotional intensity as if these conversations were actually happening, even though they exist only in your imagination. But here's what makes ghost conversations particularly toxic for your mental health. They're always one-sided. You control both characters in these imaginary dialogues, which means they never reach realistic conclusions. The other person never responds the way they actually would. You never get the satisfaction of genuine resolution. Instead, you loop through the same interactions endlessly, getting more worked up each time. Most people try to stop these imaginary conversations by suppressing them or distracting themselves. But ghost conversations are persistent because they represent unfinished emotional business. Your brain keeps replaying them because it's trying to process feelings or prepare for interactions, but it can't complete this process when everything stays in your head. This is method number 6 out of 7, and it's called the Ghost Conversation Exorcism. It works because it brings these internal dialogues into the external world where they can be seen for what they really are. Usually absurd, often impossible, and always far less compelling than they seem when they're trapped in your mind. Here's exactly how to exercise a ghost conversation. When you catch yourself having an imaginary dialogue, don't try to stop it. Instead, go to a private space, your bedroom, your car, an empty room, and have that conversation out loud. Speak both parts of the dialogue, switching between your voice and the voice of the other person. This sounds ridiculous, and that's exactly the point. When you hear yourself saying both sides of an argument out loud, the absurdity becomes immediately obvious. You realize you're essentially talking to yourself, creating drama where none exists, and wasting emotional energy on interactions that aren't happening. Let's say you keep replaying a conversation where you defend yourself to a coworker who criticized your project. In your head, this feels urgent and important. You've crafted perfect responses to their objections. You've imagined their counter-arguments and prepared rebuttals. This mental conversation might loop for hours or even days. But when you speak this dialogue out loud, playing both yourself and your coworker, something remarkable happens. You hear how one-dimensional your imaginary version of them sounds. You notice that you're attributing thoughts and motivations to them that they probably don't have. You realize that the conversation you're preparing for probably won't happen the way you're imagining, if it happens at all. The ghost conversation exorcism works because it forces you to confront the unrealistic nature of these internal dialogues. In your mind, ghost conversations feel profound and necessary. Spoken out loud, they usually sound like bad soap opera scripts, written by someone who doesn't understand the other characters. But there's a deeper psychological principle at work here. When thoughts remain internal, they maintain their emotional power because they're never tested against reality. When you externalize them through speech, your rational mind can evaluate them more objectively. You're no longer inside the conversation. You're observing it from the outside. This method also reveals how much time and energy you spend on these imaginary interactions. When you have to speak a ghost conversation out loud in real time, you realize that some of these mental dialogues would take hours to complete if they actually happened. You're literally spending hours of your life having conversations with people who aren't there about things that aren't happening. Something else powerful occurs during a ghost conversation exorcism. As you speak both parts of the dialogue, you often discover what you're really trying to accomplish. Maybe you're seeking validation, trying to process hurt feelings, or preparing for a difficult but necessary real conversation. Once you identify the underlying need, you can address it more directly instead of spinning in imaginary scenarios. After exercising a ghost conversation, most people find that the mental replay stops immediately. Your brain has completed the emotional processing it was trying to do through repetitive internal dialogue. The imaginary conversation loses its grip on your attention because it's been fully expressed and examined. The ghost conversation exorcism also prepares you for better, real conversations. After hearing how your imaginary dialogues sound out loud, you become more aware of assumptions you make about other people's thoughts and motivations. You start approaching actual interactions with more curiosity and less predetermined scripts. Part 7. The 72-hour relevance test. Your brain treats every problem like a 5-alarm fire, even when most of your worries are the mental equivalent of smoke from burnt toast. This biological overreaction served our ancestors well when most threats were immediate and physical. But in modern life, it makes you waste precious mental energy on temporary situations that will resolve themselves or become irrelevant within days. Right now, you're probably carrying mental weight from dozens of concerns that won't matter by the weekend. The awkward thing you said in a meeting yesterday, the email that sounded slightly off from your boss, the friend who seemed distant during your last conversation. Your brain is treating these situations with the same urgency it would reserve for genuine emergencies, keeping you stressed about things that are already fading in everyone else's memory. But here's what changes everything about how you relate to your worries. Most of the things that consume your mental energy today will be completely irrelevant 72 hours from now. Not just less important, completely irrelevant. Yet you spend the same emotional energy on these temporary concerns as you do on genuinely significant issues that will impact your life for months or years. This creates a tragic misallocation of your mental resources. While you're burning emotional energy on things that won't matter by Thursday, You're too mentally exhausted to properly address the decisions and relationships that will shape your future. You're essentially spending $100 bills on penny candy while claiming you can't afford groceries. This is method number 7 out of 7, and it's called the 72-hour relevance test. It works because it forces you to distinguish between temporary emotional turbulence and genuine long-term concerns. It's a ruthless prioritization system that prevents minor issues from consuming disproportionate amounts of your mental bandwidth. Here's how the test works. When anxiety or worry arises about any situation, you ask yourself one simple question. Will this matter in 72 hours? If the honest answer is no, then it doesn't deserve significant mental real estate right now. You acknowledge the thought, then redirect your attention to something that will actually impact your life beyond this week. Let's say you're worried because someone didn't respond to your text message as quickly as usual. Your mind starts creating stories about what this might mean. Are they angry with you? Are they losing interest in the friendship? Did you say something wrong in your last conversation? This worry could consume hours of your mental energy. But when you apply the 72-hour relevance test, you realize that by Thursday, either they will have responded with a perfectly normal explanation, or you'll have more important things occupying your attention. This concern, which feels significant right now, almost certainly won't matter in 3 days. The same test applies to most work stress, social awkwardness, minor conflicts, and daily inconveniences that feel overwhelming in the moment. The meeting that didn't go perfectly, the slightly critical comment from a family member, the project deadline that's making you nervous. Most of these situations will either resolve themselves or become background noise within 72 hours. But here's where the 72-hour relevance test becomes even more powerful. For concerns that do pass the 72-hour test, you extend the timeline. Will this matter in 72 days? For bigger issues that pass that test, you ask, will this matter in 72 months? This creates a hierarchy of concern that helps you invest your emotional energy proportionally to the actual long-term impact of various situations. Something remarkable happens when you consistently apply this test. You realize that maybe 5% of your daily worries actually deserve the mental energy you've been giving them. The other 95% are temporary emotional reactions to temporary situations that your brain is treating as permanent crises. This doesn't mean you become callous or stop caring about people's feelings. It means you stop wasting emotional energy on situations that time will resolve naturally. Instead of spending 3 hours worrying about a potentially awkward conversation, you have that conversation and move on. Instead of analyzing every nuance of someone's tone in an email, you focus on the actual content and respond appropriately. The 72-hour relevance test also reveals how much of your stress comes from imaginary futures rather than present realities. Most of what you worry about never actually happens, and even when it does happen, it rarely unfolds the way you imagined. By filtering your concerns through this timeline test, you stop investing emotional energy in scenarios that exist only in your imagination. This method transforms your relationship with temporary discomfort. Instead of treating every moment of awkwardness, uncertainty, or mild stress as a problem that needs solving, you recognize these experiences as normal parts of life that will pass naturally. You develop emotional resilience not by avoiding difficult feelings, but by understanding which ones deserve your sustained attention. Part 8. The Paradox of Mental Minimalism. We've reached the final piece of this mental transformation, and it reveals the most counterintuitive truth about thinking. The less you think, the clearer your thoughts become. The fewer decisions you agonize over, the better your choices get. The less mental noise you allow, the more you hear your authentic inner voice. This is the paradox of mental minimalism. By doing less with your mind, you accomplish more with your life. Your brain is like a high-performance engine that's been flooded with low-grade fuel. All the overthinking, worry, and mental chatter aren't signs of a powerful mind. They're symptoms of a cluttered one. When you remove the mental debris, what remains isn't emptiness. What remains is clarity, focus, and the kind of deep thinking that actually... Think about the most successful and peaceful people you know. They don't seem to be overthinking everything. They make decisions quickly, stick to them confidently, and spend their mental energy on what truly matters. This isn't because they're less intelligent or less sensitive than you. It's because they've learned to distinguish between productive thinking and mental spinning. Mental minimalism isn't about suppressing your intelligence or becoming emotionally numb. It's about using your mind like a precision instrument instead of letting it run like a radio stuck between stations, picking up static and interference from every direction. When you eliminate mental noise, the signal becomes crystal clear. Every method you've learned today serves this larger principle. The thought elimination diet showed you which categories of thinking actually serve you versus which ones just create mental inflammation. The mental container method taught you that thoughts, like everything else in life, work better with boundaries and structure. Decision minimalism revealed how the illusion of unlimited choice actually paralyzes you, while strategic limitations set you free to focus on what matters. The Stoic preemptive funeral demonstrated that facing your fears completely strips them of their power to terrorize you with partial glimpses. The physical override protocol proved that your body is often smarter than your mind when it comes to breaking destructive mental patterns. The ghost conversation exorcism showed you how much energy you waste on imaginary interactions that exist only in your head. And the 72-hour relevance test gave you a ruthless filter for distinguishing between temporary emotional turbulence and genuine long-term concerns that deserve your sustained attention. Together, these 7 methods create a comprehensive system for mental minimalism. But here's what makes this approach truly powerful. It's not about thinking less, because thinking is bad. It's about thinking less so that when you do think, it's profound, focused, and genuinely useful. The ancient Stoics understood something that modern life has made us forget. Your mind is not meant to be constantly active, any more than your body is meant to be constantly running. Just as your muscles grow stronger during rest periods between workouts, your mind becomes clearer and more powerful when it gets regular breaks from the constant chatter of overthinking. You now have 7 proven methods to reclaim your mental space and transform overthinking from a destructive habit into a thing of the past. These aren't theory. They're practical tools that work immediately when you apply them consistently. The thought elimination diet alone could change your life within a week if you commit to removing just one category of toxic thinking. But here's the most important thing to remember. Mental minimalism isn't a destination you reach. It's a practice you maintain. Every day, you'll face the choice between mental clutter and mental clarity. Every moment of worry is an opportunity to apply the 72 hours.